everybody. I'm Rayna from Blue Cypress Books, and welcome to Book Banter this evening. Tonight, I'm going to be talking to Rien Fertel, who is a New Orleans native, and he is currently teaching at Tulane. He has 3 books. His first one, Imagining the Creole City, is about New Orleans. His second, One True Barbecue, is about whole hog barbecue, which we'll talk about in a moment. And his third and most recent book, Drive-By Truckers, Southern Rock Opera, which is part of the 33 and a Third book series, which we'll also talk about, an amazing series. He's also writing a series of essays, the Lost Lit essays for 24 parishes that showcase lost literature and gives them back a new book review and gives them a little bit of a new life. And I am going to click the button here and welcome Rien on its screen. Hi, Rien.
Hi, Rayna. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you for joining me this evening.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk.
Awesome. I want to say to everybody, if you have any questions for Rien or for me, or just want to say hi, tell us where you're viewing from. That's always fun. Put them in the comments and we will respond to them as we go along this evening. So to prepare for tonight, I ate some barbecue and listened to some Drive-By Truckers, which is the best prep that I think I've done for a book banter so far. So thank you for that.
No, thank you.
The first book of yours that I read actually was One True Barbecue.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. Tell me and tell all of us really, because I did not know this before I read that book. What's the difference between just like going to a barbecue joint and whole hog barbecue?
Yeah, so I mean, whole hog barbecue is just it's bigger, so it's an entire pig, and when you cook an entire pig at one time, the whole animal, it takes a lot of time. So it can take 12 hours or 24 hours, and the restaurants that do it in kind of like the most authentic old-timey way, you do it over a very kind of like rustic brick pit, and they shovel hot coals under it all night long, all through the next morning. So it allowed me, when I was researching the book, like back in 2010 is when I started doing the research, it allowed me to sit next to the fire with these pitmasters and just talk to them about their lives and get them to share stories and record their voices. And that the book kind of, came out of that work.
One thing that I love about that book when I finished it, I realized it was really a record of these people that might not have that any other way.
Yeah, I mean, when I was doing the research in 2010, 2011, a lot of the restaurants that were doing whole hog barbecue using live fire were closing. They were disappearing. There had been a lot more, certainly in the previous decades. A lot of those had shut down, and a lot of the people I spoke to just didn't know if they could continue. A lot of them were aging out. They didn't know who they would leave the business to. And at the same time, as I started doing more and more research and started sold the book and wrote the book, whole hog became very hot. Literally, it became trendy and hip. And so whole hog restaurants started opening in cities for the first time. So in Charleston and then in Brooklyn. I lucked out that I was able to do the research and do the writing when I did, because several of the men who I spoke to and really spent days and days with, talking about everything, talking about barbecue, but talking about just everything but barbecue a lot of times, because it wasn't necessarily the barbecue that really first drew me into their stories. But a lot of them have passed on. And so I was lucky to be able to record their stories, to even put their names out there into the world. And that was kind of the gist of the book, is the workers the men who were doing this labor were usually completely unknown in their communities. They usually didn't have a stake in the ownership of the restaurants where they worked. So I wanted to, at least give them some credit, put their names out in the world.
Well, you did a great job, and I really recommend it, not just to foodies or people who are super into barbecue, but like it's really a history of those people and what they do, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
So next, drive-by truckers. And so for writing a 33 and a third book. And for those who don't know, right, 33 and a third is a series of books, and they're small, and each one covers an album. Is that correct? It's just one album?
Yeah. It's just one album. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a series that's been around, I think, since around the beginning of the century. I think it came around 2000. And
I love how you said that. That is so true. But it's the first time anyone has ever said in conversation the begining of the century and meant 2000 to me.
Yeah. No, it's scary. No, and in the process, they come out with maybe 10 or 12 a year. I'm number 133 in the series, which is easy to remember. And there's a pitch process where you write a couple chapters and you form an idea for a book dedicated to an album, and writers have done whatever has struck them as interesting. So a lot of people have done like song by song analyses of albums, or like how an album was made, or a couple of people have been inspired to like write novels based on albums. I wanted to, I was listening to the Southern Rock Opera, which is this double disc like rock opera by the Drive-By Truckers, when I was doing my last leg of research for the barbecue book. And I had seen the Drive-By Truckers in concert. I had, my stepfather had made a mixtape for me. I was very aware of them. I wasn't like a great fan of the band, but I heard this album and I thought, it really jived with like a lot of my interests. And that's like, Southern identity and, race and culture in the South. And this is, and death. There's a lot I've been enamored with that kind of subject. And all of those are just like, really to the front on this album. And I was listening to the album. I said, oh, this would make a great 33 and a third, something I had always wanted to be a part of. And I pitched it and got lucky. They grabbed it. So it was a fun book to write. And the book like takes, I didn't want to do an analysis of like the band. I didn't want to interview the band. I didn't want to, I don't know. What I did want to do is use the album to take a road trip throughout the South, like a literal road trip. And it's easy to do that with that album. There's the album kind of like takes place in different parts of the South, and the album is about the Drive-By Truckers and them, like a fictional representation of them growing up in the South. It's also about Leonard Skinner and the complexities and complications of that band. And it was it turned out to be a fun book to write.
And did you get to meet them or talk to them at all about it?
I mean, the band knows that the book is out. The book came out in 2018. I've talked to Patterson Hood, the lead singer for the band, and he gave us okay. I heard the band said their quote back to me was, "It's accurate." So that's as good as I could get.
I guess.
Sure.
Yeah. Not going to complain about that review, I guess.
Yeah. Okay,
so Linda has a question. If you could write about, she says any band, but obviously any other band, who would you write about if they let you write another one, or maybe write something else? Who would you want to write about?
Well, I can't write another 33 and a third. I wish I could, but I mean, I would love to. People have asked us before, and I'd love to. I mean, one of my favorite bands, and really since I was a kid, has been REM. And there's no really great biography of REM, and I love REM. And I just think it's so interesting, this Southern band that maybe represented the South and became these, you know, one of the great pop rock bands of the 90s and beyond and before. And I remain a great listener and fan of them. Uh, a decade, I guess, now, after their dissolution. And I would love to read a great biography
Of the band.
of REM.
Yeah, so between the two of them, Drive-By Truckers and REM, like Drive-By Truckers, they put their Southern, right up front. There's no question that they are from the South.
Yeah.
REM's not the same. So I wonder, I mean, if you know, you know, but
Sure.
I wonder from the outside looking in, do you think would people be surprised if they found out REM is from the South? If they had no idea, do you think?
No, I mean, they were a Southern band, and I mean, their early albums like really incorporated Southern iconography. You can't help but like you stare at those early albums like Murmur, and they're really, I mean, they're actually, they have pictures of kudzu, overgrown, landscapes with kudzu. So I mean, they were obviously Southern. They did embrace their Southernness. They continue to live, for all I know. I mean, I know they live in New York and places, I guess, but they continue to live to some extent, or continue to live in Athens, Georgia. I mean, they just they like a lot of bands from the South. They went beyond their Southernness, their early Southernness perhaps, and became something larger, and were embraced by MTV, and not as a Southern band. Maybe at first, I've seen some old interviews. They were kind of seen as these like outcast, weird Southern kids from like an outcast, weird Southern town that is Athens, a college town. And there's a great book that really touches on this that I read last year for an essay I wrote called Cool Town. It's about Athens, Georgia, and that kind of scene in the 70s, 80s, 90s. But like once the 90s, came around, and MTV really, seized upon this band, and they became such a big hot thing. They became a global band.
Right.
And which, as I understand, it burned them out, and that's why they don't make music anymore.
That's so sad. But we think about that, but then at the same time, like, even if it's an art that you love, that's the same job. The same band is the same job. Like writing on the exact same subject all of the time. That's all of you do. I can see that would be. I mean, I know I've known plenty of people in bands, and it's hard to keep it fresh, especially if you hit that kind of popularity and keep going, together. Ooh,
and the story about them, like, it's such a, I mean, the story I think that needs to be told about them, and it's been told forever, but like everyone knows it, but like, we think of rock bands as, there's always a sordid history, right? There's always like breakups and betrayals and just nasty bullshit that they hand to each other. But like REM seems to have like really been four guys in love with each other the entire time and enamored with each other's company. I mean, they're the only band to like, as far as I understand, but like, they were certainly the biggest band to equally share co-writing credits for every single song. I mean, that's incredible. And when they broke up, they decided to do it together. And they haven't gone on to be a legacy act or like an old timers act. So I think that's a very special story. I think it's a lovely little story to tell.
Well, I hope one day you get to write it, because it would be very entertaining. And I know that you'd get all the good history and the tidbits. The tidbits are good. You got to get those in there. So, okay, you alluded to the beginning of the century, and then also these bands. And I think, and I don't know this for sure, but I'm pretty sure we're almost the exact same age. So because in your most recent, I believe, well, the one you sent me, Lost Lit, and you're comparing to Confederacy of Dunces, you said that you were born just months apart?
Yeah, I'm born the same year. Yeah, so I'm born in 1980.
Yeah,
So
me too.
the same year Confederacy of Dunces is finally is published.
Finally published. Yeah, my birthday's in December of 1980. So yeah, when you said that, I was like, I thought we were about the same age, because we've run into each other at bookstores and book events and stuff for like years, and this is the first time we've really gotten to sit down and talk about anything.
Yeah.
But I always like, okay, I know, like, we make some of the same references, and I'm like, but you're guessing. And then I read that and I was like, oh, yep, we're totally the same age. Yeah. When the book that you are writing about, though, A Walk on the Wild Side, is that's the one?
Yeah.
I had never heard of this book. And you guys, I'm going to put a link to these essays that Ryan's been writing in 64 Parishes, because it's just fascinating. It's like you're pulling up these older books and making that, bringing them back out and writing these what are like book reviews, like these really awesome book reviews. And I look at it, I'm like, wait a minute, this book came out a long time ago. When I first read the first one, I was like, what is he doing here? And then it's fascinating. So
I mean, it's going back and like just encouraging people. If one person picks up a book for every column that comes out quarterly, I'm happy. But it's like and also I get a big thrill out of discovering all these old books that have some connection to Louisiana, whether the author's from Louisiana or they're written about Louisiana. A Walk on the Wild Side, which I had read before, I think right after Hurricane Katrina, and I love the book. I think it's one of the great novels that came out of New Orleans for sure. And I argue in this Lost Lit essay that it's my belief that John Kennedy Toole was not only inspired by this novel when writing Confederacy of Dunces, but because of the similarities of the novel, it just can't help but, to me, feel like he kind of stole a bit of from Walk on the Wild Side. There's just too many connections. I mean, both are about everyone I think has probably read Confederacy of Dunces, but both stories about a younger alienated guy who traverses the city of New Orleans like job to job and meets a wacky cast of characters. And Walk on the Wild Side, which came out in the early 1960s, I believe, 1963. I don't know. I have to look it up. But I mean, that's the story. That's the story in Walk on the Wild Side. And there's even a comical parrot in Walk on the Wild Side, and there's of course a silly parrot character in Confederacy of Dunces. I don't know. I mean, they're too close, and I mean, Confederacy of Dunces is like so associated with the city and so with New Orleans and so associated with the literature that comes out of the city. I think a lot of people have written novels post 1980 with Confederacy of Dunces in mind, or they reference it. And I think it's a very easy novel to love because of its humor. I think it's a very easy novel to hate too. There's a great piece that came out, I think, January of this year by Tom Bissell in the New Yorker about the Confederacy of Dunces and his really, his distaste for the novel. And I think as I've read, I read Confederacy of Dunces every decade of my life since I was a teenager when I was assigned it in high school. And my feelings about it change. I'll read it again a few years from now. And, so maybe I was looking for something to push back against Confederacy of Dunces, but I actually do think that there is something there in Walk on the Wild Side, which, whether you see it through the lens of Confederacy or Dunces or not, is like a fantastic, funny, and very strange novel.
Well, I am fascinated by that. The idea that, where we get our ideas from, I guess. And that John Kennedy could have been influenced by this novel makes me want to read it like even more, better, worse, not making any judgments, right? But like it makes me want to read it because I do that process of where those ideas come from, whether it's a conscious, you read this book and you go, oh, I'm going to write a book like this, or whether you read it and a decade later you're writing your own and these things just happen, these ideas, where did these ideas come from? Elizabeth was reading an article in the New York Times, right? It's called my bad art friend, or who is the bad art
You're
friend?
setting me up. You are setting.
Yeah. And the idea of this article is kind of that idea. Where do these ideas come from? How much is okay to borrow from real life? Right. Whether in this article they're talking about writing fiction, but I think it works both ways. If you're writing fiction, you're writing nonfiction. Do you know you're borrowing it? Do you not? Is that okay? So I don't know if you write mostly nonfiction.
Yeah, I write only nonfiction. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So your thoughts on that, I guess, a little bit with fiction, but also,
Sure.
How does that parlay into the nonfiction that you write all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I knew you. I mean, you asked me before in an email to express my thoughts on Bad Art Friend, and I there's a lot of Bad Art Friend takes, and I urge everyone, if you haven't read the New York Times Magazine piece that came out, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago, a month ago, it's fun. It's like it's titillating, and it's also kind of I mean, it's sad. It's a deeply sad, story about the dissolution of a friendship, for sure. It's scandalous. It's a good scandalous profile of a pair of writers, and I've thought about it. I don't want to say too much. I could say I did make.
I love this so much. You're the first person to make an article of clothing for Book Banter. So
good. Well, it's Halloween. It's Halloween, so I was inspired, and I was inspired by your question. No, I mean, look, I think what's interesting, or like your original question, is why do we care about this story besides it being like very juicy? Why has it gained so much traction out there and gotten so many tweets? And I just think we're in an age. I mean, like literary stealing. Yeah, it's a story about a writer is accusing another writer of stealing her story. Basically, that's it. And literary theft is as old as literature, arguably. But we seem to be in an age. You asked me this question, and at first I was like, well, I don't want to test that. And then I started thinking about it, and I remembered this this review by Maureen Corrigan from, I don't know, within the last couple months. She's the book critic for NPR's Fresh Air, and she was reviewing Laura Lippman, the mystery writer's new novel, which came out this summer, I guess. And she makes the point like that she has read, or in her like giant stack of books that have come out this year, there's 6 other books besides Laura Lippman's that all have the same plot, and that plot being someone stealing someone else's story and creating some sort of art or literary work or something out of it. So we have that. Why is that? Why is stealing? Why is writing someone else's story like part of the zeitgeist? I don't know, but it seems to be everywhere. Like there's, this is like, does it all go back to like, Trump declaring the election a theft, right? A stolen election, which he, promised long before the election ever happened. Like he kept like setting it up. So it was definitely like circulating in the air. And my boo reminded me that like, TikTok videos are all, being accused of, I don't know much about TikTok, but I heard about this, like, in the New York Times that, TikTok creators, there's widespread accusations of plagiarism of dances on the TikTok app, of just like straight up stealing. it just reminds me of, why is this going on? I don't know. Why is it big right now? I have to think deeper about that. I don't know. I mean, Janet Malcolm just died, and she was one of the great essayists, and she was a nonfiction writer. She wrote for the New Yorker for decades and decades, and one of her, probably her most famous, piece of work, piece of nonfiction work, piece of writing, was like all she did. A lot of what she did was these really beautiful and intricate profiles of all types of people. And this, in this one book, that came out, I believe, in the 80s. She talks about how the work of journalists and the work of nonfiction writers, the works of anyone who, goes up to somebody with a pad and a pen or a tape recorder, what they do, she calls morally indefensible. She says, like, whatever you do as a nonfiction writer, as a profile, as a journalist, is it's stealing a little bit of that person's life. So it's not just fiction that can be accused of this, but it's everywhere. Why is it in the air? I don't know. There needs to be a good think piece or essay about that. But I don't know. Or we just ask our dearly departed former president. I don't know.
I think for this one too, for me at least, I'm reading it, and part of it is that voyeurist, gossipy part of it. Why this particular story may have been retweeted and retweeted. I mean, it's not a new idea that
Right.
you've borrowed things or stolen things from other people, real life, fictional, whatever.
Yeah.
But this particular one, and the writing of the profile itself, of course, it feeds into that idea. And I did put the link in the comments, so you guys can click on it and read this afterwards. Definitely, it's a rabbit hole. It is. It does pose a lot of questions, and as a writer, then makes you think about what you're doing a little bit differently. Maybe if that hasn't really been posed to you in that way, we all learn not to plagiarize. Yes, we all are supposed to know that, but then having it presented in this way makes you go, where did I get that thought? At least it did for me. I was like, where did I get that idea? Where did I get this idea? And when I'm writing, I don't often ask myself that question, because for fiction at least, I often think, well, this is mine, right? I just invented this.
Right.
This is, something that just flowed out of me onto the page. And obviously it's all never happened before.
Right.
But is it?
No, I don't know. I mean, I mean, maybe it's just a really juicy story, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's, it is, we are interested when people break up, or just
Right?
a friendship or relationship. And that's the heart of the story. And they toss all types of accusations back and forth, and lawsuits and more lawsuits and counter lawsuits. And so, yeah, it's just kind of fun and terrible.
The beginning setup of this too, is them thinking, like, is she really my friend? Like, one of them thinks they're friends more than the other one does, it seems.
Yeah.
And that poses a whole thing to me too. Because, so I went to elementary school in Florida. I'm originally from Florida. And I went to the same school for the first 5 years with the same group of kids, right? So I left the school, don't see any of these people for years and years and years. I grow up, I'm an adult, I'm in line at the McDonald's. I pull up, and a kid from my elementary school is handing me my McDonald's. And he says to me, this is gonna be like debit card, and he's like, I recognize him, but I don't know, you say something, it's been like a long time. And he's like, oh, are you, and he says my maiden name, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's me. And he's like, oh yeah, I went to this school. And I was like, oh yeah, you're the kid who locked me in a shed. And I did it before I thought about it. I absolutely did it before I thought about it. But here's the thing. He, from that moment on, to me, we were not friends. it was a stupid, looking back, it was a stupid, childish thing. He wasn't a bad kid. It wasn't incredibly malicious, whatever. But that was the end of that for me, but not for him.
Right.
And we said a couple other things through the window while we're waiting for the food and stuff. And clearly he saw our friendship very differently than I did.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes back to me whenever this type of thing comes up. And at the beginning of that New York Times, that's part of the heart of that beginning too, is like, are we friends? Are we not friends? What do you think we are, from both sides? And I don't know. That's a crazy story. That's like a weird personal story or whatever, but like it happens. These things happen.
You should write it. You should write a short story about it.
Because that's real. That's real life. And that's like a weird thing. You could never, if I sat down to write that, I would think that's a McDonald's drive-through. Like 15 years later, no one's going to believe that.
That's like the good juice of fiction. Yeah.
That's real. That's real. Okay. So you are now, though, teaching at Tulane.
Yep.
And you are teaching two of the most interesting classes, I think. And you knew it because you tweeted it and you put it on your Instagram and you're like, this is what I get. I went to school for X amount of years so I could teach. What is it? It is Why Taylor Swift Matters and the History of Mardi Gras. And I am fascinated by this. Did you think this is where you were headed when you have a degree in history and you're like, this is what I'm going to do with my life?
No, no. I mean, I wanted to. No, I've always like, I kept going to school and with like the intent of like not being a teacher. I mean, I remember in like fifth grade, we had to write like it was some sort of like achievement kind of like test. It wasn't like quite a SAT or ACT. It was much earlier than that. But we were very young, and I remember we had to write an essay to show like what level we were, our writing, our ability, and it was they gave us just like the softball question, and which was like why what job what job do you want in life, or what job would you never want in life? And I remember writing an essay, like we had like half an hour or whatever, and write an essay like why I would never want to be a teacher. And I just never wanted to be a teacher, but I kept, I went back to graduate school after Hurricane Katrina sent me out of the city, and then I got my PhD in history, and I didn't want to go on the job market. Like I wanted to write books instead, and I have, been lucky in that endeavor. But at the same time, like I have continued to teach because I really do enjoy teaching. So I've taught for the past 14 years or something. And Tulane, where I got my PhD, called me up this summer and was like, will you come teach some courses for us? And I was, I didn't really want to. And then I said, what would it look like if I can teach like whatever I want? And I just I knew I wanted to teach a history of Mardi Gras. I wanted to teach something very locally focused. I knew it would be a large classroom, a lecture style class filled with first year students, and first year students haven't been to Mardi Gras. And I knew there would be some second year students, and second year students missed out on Mardi Gras for the most part last year. Oh, yeah. And so I thought it would be a good class and interesting. I thought it would draw some bodies in the room, and it did, and it's been a fun class to teach, and just to complicate Mardi Gras for them. And the goal when I pitched it, I said I want to teach a class where I could just envision two first year dudes standing outside Fat Harry's bar room on St. Charles Avenue, watching Bacchus roll by on the Sunday before Mardi Gras, and one of them, who was in my class, nudges the other and says, You don't know this, but I can tell you 10 things about what's going on right now that is really effed up. And so that is what I think I've very successfully done. And my students like show up in my office, and they're like, "What? I didn't know Mardi Gras was so elitist and so racist, and so we get to talk about that history and also so freeing, and so liberating, and so we've had a good half semester so far. And the Taylor Swift class is just like this, oddity of a class I thought up. I was doing some like reading in the history of love, like basically, and I also wanted to like kind of teach a class in music. I was sort of pitching that, and I said, what if we brought these two things together? And then I wanted to ask a question. The main question in the class is like, why is music more often than not about love? About romance and about relationships and about breakups. And so it's kind of like we're taking like a two track kind of road with this class, and we're reading a couple books on the history of love. We just read.
Yeah, what are you reading?
Favorite book so far. I have 15 students in the class, and it's like pure seminar class. We just read books, and then we show up and we like talk about it, and then they write essays. And we read this really wonderful book called Labor of Love, which is about a history of dating in America. And they were blown away, and I was blown away. I had never read this book before, about the invention of love and how the invention of dating, and how dating in America surfaces around the turn of last century, 1900s. And it happens because women were moving from the home to the workforce, right? They were getting jobs. And when they were moving to cities, and when they get to the city and when they get these jobs, they discover very quickly that they're not being paid anywhere near what men are being paid. And the mistreatment in factories or secretarial positions are just overwhelming. So they don't have time to both, partner, and they don't have enough money. She gives all these great stats. Like, they also don't have enough money at the end of the day to like feed themselves a lot of times, because the pay is so terrible and the rent is so high, and just living expenses are so high in cities, even 120 years ago. And so basically these women are forced to do this thing that is called dating, and which was not a Friday and Saturday night event, 150 years ago, say in the 1800s. And so, dating both frees them and shackles them, and becomes a kind of second form of labor, is her argument. And so they have to, they work all day long, a 9 to 5, and then they have to go take another job, which is like, finding a man that will like entertain them and like, feed them. And it's it's a bleak book. And her argument is like, ever since the invention of dating in the early 20th century, dating has always been the work, the labor of women. And it's a great book, and the students really like it. Yeah. And so we're also reading like books about like love and music. We're reading this book called right now we're halfway through this book called Good Booty, which came out a couple years ago, by Ann Powers, who's like the chief music critic for NPR. And it's about like she makes the argument about why American pop music from the very beginning has been about love and sex, and also kind of the racial dynamics of this. And it's a very interesting read. And so it's a fun class to teach for sure.
So how do you tie in Taylor Swift exactly? Like, I don't know Taylor Swift's whole canon. But I do know it's a lot about love songs. I mean, do you end up tying it in a little bit for real, or is that just the theme and overarching thing?
Yeah, I mean, the title was a red herring. I mean, it was to get people interested, but also, I mean, in the course catalog, I said like, this will not be a class on Taylor Swift, and we go weeks without ever mentioning her name. Britney Spears and definitely comes up more. and Miley Cyrus when they think of like more modern, when they want to bring like history into the modern day. The examples for my students. But Taylor Swift, I mean, we associate her with love songs, just like we do Britney Spears and Miley Cyrus. But Taylor Swift felt right, I guess. And it could have been, why does Harry Styles matter? Why does Prince matter? It could have been anything.
Taylor Swift too, like her love life when she was like at the pinnacle and everyone's talking about her. That's one of the things, for good or bad.
I mean, we arguably we are still peak Swift.
True. Again, I don't know all of Swift's catalog, so I'm not following it exactly. But my Facebook and Twitter and Instagram all light up when she released her last album, like without telling anybody or something. And then all of a sudden, everyone's like, "Oh my god, I listened to the new Taylor Swift album." I was like, "I guess I should do that."
Yeah, I mean, she released her album secretly. Yeah, I mean, which she stole from Beyonce, and like a lot of these books are about how pop music has stolen from Black artists, and that's not a new argument, but that's to talk about this in terms of like love and sex, that a couple of these books do, and even the Labor of Love book that I talked about, kind of gets into that. The racial dynamics of dating. It's an interesting kind of like sub argument to look at in the class.
Yeah, well, and I would imagine dating in general opened a lot of that up too, because you're talking about the Labor of Love book before this time. You're just getting together with who your family thinks you should get together with, or who lives next door, or who you really, really know. It doesn't open up a lot for mixed race couples at all. Then you start dating, and now it's you're out in the workforce. You're out here seeing a bunch of different kinds of people, and all of a sudden, that's more of a thing as well. So that I see that connection.
Yeah.
So the articles or the essays that you write for 64 Parishes, is there a book that you haven't done yet that you really want to?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, I have an ever like expanding list. I even found a book just a few days ago that I had never heard of, and I threw on the list. What do I want to do that I've never done? I'm just so excited. Like when the next one comes out. I mean, I'll plug like what I'm writing right now, which is on Monday, and it's this book, City of Night by John Recchi. I guess I need to learn how to pronounce his last name correctly. But City of Night came out in 1963, and it's like this. I mean, it's like it should, like, if there was any, if the world of literature, if there was any like fairness, like we would be reading this book. Like this would be in the pantheon of like great American novels. I think it's like this stunning book. It is about a young man, a gay hustler in the 1950s who travels from Texas, where he lives, to Times Square in New York, and then Los Angeles, and then spends a bit of time in San Francisco. And then the final third of the book happens during Mardi Gras in New Orleans, and that's what inspired him to write the book. But like this book, and it's like it has like beat tones, like beat literature, tones to it. But it really like inspired or engendered like a whole host of like hustler novels and films that came out after. So like Midnight Cowboy is like, comes out after this book, and like definitely owes a debt to this book. And an Easy Rider, which is very similar in ways to this book, and has its own kind of has its own Mardi Gras scene in the film Easy Rider, and it's just such it's a beautiful book. It's definitely it's a big book. It can be difficult to read at times, but it I don't know, it just travels well, and it's just so much better than like On the Road. It really is.
Right.
It really is. And I hope like the book has, it like, it celebrated its 50th anniversary a few years ago, and there was like kind of a bunch of like remembrance essays and interviews with the author who's still around for the book. And I just think it needs to be more widely read. I wish I would have read it earlier. It's wonderful, and the scenes like the picture it paints of Mardi Gras in New Orleans is just like so sordid and so devastating, and it's also like a book about love and like what love is and how do we love, and definitely like queer love, but just like love in America in the 50s and 60s, and like how with the world falling apart during post-war and during the Cold War, and like it still resonates today. Like how is it possible to love? I don't know. Yeah.
Well, it's still in print. I just looked it up on our website and I put the link in there. So that one is still in print. You can just we can order a copy of that for sure.
Yeah.
I have to say that I don't know when you wrote that short essay and you told everybody you did not want to be a teacher. I don't know what you told everyone you wanted to be.
Oh, I think it was either or. So I went negative.
You just like, I definitely don't want to do this.
Yeah.
I feel, and I don't know if you feel this way, because I don't know what your dream is, but
to write books forever. That's the only dream.
Well, you're writing books, you're reviewing books. You have a book review like article that comes out every quarter. Is it every quarter?
For 64 parishes, yeah.
Yeah, for 64 parishes, which writing original book reviews right now is you are a lucky person to have that as part of your job. And then, you wrote your own syllabus there, your own things, your classes. So if anyone I know is living a dream, I feel like it might be you. So congratulations on that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky, and I mean, there's some work involved, but
obviously there's a lot of work.
No, I enjoy it. Yeah. I mean, I never wanted to be a teacher, but like I did want to surround myself with books, and I was a very early bookish kid. And remained a bookish kid and like a pretty crappy student during my undergraduate years, because I was just like reading. I read everything in class, but would spend too much time, I guess, reading outside of class, and didn't,
it's all fun and games with the reading. They love that
I didn't do,
until
like, my
you
Spanish
stop doing other. Exactly.
Yeah.
What's the deal with that?
Yeah, and I just finished a new book. So I'm.
Yes, I want to mention that before we go too, because one of the other great things that I love about your books is that they're so eclectic the way you write. You've got the history of New Orleans, you've got barbecue, you've got the drive-by truckers, and next up is
a book about pelicans, about brown pelicans.
I'm so in to this. What is it, like a history of the pelican, like from nature, or it's the like Louisiana?
It's a human history of the pelicans. The short answer is I was doing a lot of reading. I mean, I'm very worried about my adopted city of New Orleans. I'm very worried about. I'm originally from Lafayette, Louisiana. I'm very worried about the state of this state and the state of the coast and the future, which I don't think is gonna look very favorable for us, and because of rapid changes in the environment and rising sea levels. And I was doing a lot of reading about nature and the end of the world, and I wanted to kind of like, I was thinking a lot about what the end of the world would look like. And in the story of the pelican, I discovered that like this little end of the world story, and how we have like inadvertently almost caused the extinction of this bird, and did once locally in the state of Louisiana, numerous times. So we're talking like 4 or 5 times over the past 120 years. And it just like, I don't know. I mean, the end of the world is not going to happen like maybe like our parents' generations feared. It's gonna be slow and quiet. And the Pelican has experienced it's doing very well now, but it has experienced a slow and quiet kind of disillusion and or death. So that's the story. It's a sad book, but it's a hopeful book too, I think, because we have the Pelican is I hate the word resilient when it's placed on people and on maybe on animals, but the Pelican, for lack of a better word, I can't think of right now, it's a resilient creature. And just like we might be a resilient people in city, like we're often told. And the Pelican has survived and has continued to survive in Louisiana, not so much through its own doing. It's all because of people helping it along. And so that, we can only help ourselves, I guess, is the moral of the story. The spoiler alert.
You say the book might be sad, but the information that you're giving and the awareness of the brown pelican, you go, you see it, you don't think of it, but being aware of the actual plight of the brown pelican, is doing a lot of good work.
Yeah.
When do we expect?
It'll come out late next year, so sometime in a year.
All right. Well, that is awesome. We'll keep our eye out for that. Guys, go to the links I posted in these comments. Read Ryan's articles, essays in 64 parishes. There are links to all of his books. I'm clicking here, and there's a link to all of his books on our website. Call us, email us, use the website, get his books. You want them. Keep your eye out for the Brown Pelican book. And thank you, Ryan, for joining me this evening for Book Banter.
Thank you. Thank you all.
I truly appreciate it. Bye, guys.